welcome to Career Diaries by eu-mdr, the podcast dedicated to hearing about some of the most inspirational stories from leaders in the medtech industry. I'm super excited to have with me the president of MicroPort CRM, Benoit Clinchamps. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I always like to have my guests maybe introduce themselves, right, in their own words. So maybe you could just give, our listeners a little bit of an insight as to who you are and what you do.
Sure. So thank you, Elena, for this opportunity. So as you said, my name is Benoit Clinchamps, and I am president of MicroPort CRM since now May 2018. MicroPort is a leader, even though we have our headquarters in France with very global activity, but we are a leader in the healthcare industry. We do develop, manufacture, and sell globally class 3 medical devices such as pacemakers and implantable defibrillators. Regarding me, I bring something like more than 20 years of experience in the medical technology industry, and 9 years, which is more strange, I would say, of experience in the aerospace technical industry.
I think that's really, really interesting. I think you're my first guest who hasn't got, let's say, a classic medtech experience all the way from the beginning. And I have to say, though, that is something that we see quite often, transitions from aerospace, especially on the quality side, transitions and engineering side, transitions from aerospace into medtech. And also we see it from automotive. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think we are working both industries, so aerospace and medical, we are working in a very regulated environment. We have to take care about the safety of passengers in the aerospace field, or the pilots and the crew, and in the medtech industry, we need to take care about the patients. Patient safety first, for sure, and also about the physician. So we are operating in very regulated environment. First thing. Second thing, this is also very technical. This is very high tech. The way we have to develop things to be able to fly big objects, or the way we have to develop things to be able to implant very intelligent, tiny devices into a patient body. So very technical, both fields. And I think those are the two main I would say, relationship we can have with both industries. So that's why I think we can move from one to the other, even though we have risk attached, right? Because even if this is very technical, even if the regulation is still existing, and regulation and the technical things are not at all the same. So very two different worlds at the end of the day.
So let's go all the way back. So what did you study by background?
So I was studying engineering, and I have an engineering degree. Okay. Then maybe very quickly about my career path. So I did start as a design engineer at Airbus, working on the helicopter system for helicopters. And I was design engineer for something like 1 year and a half, less than 2 years. And very quickly, I was interested by managing people and having leadership on a team. So very quickly, I moved just after to a management role, and I was having a couple of technicians to manage, designers. That was something which was absolutely very interesting for me. And since this time, I was always having management role. Then I moved to a very different role, still at Airbus, but I was moving to a project manager role. I was probably one of the youngest at that time. I was having something like 29 years old when I was moving to this position. And just before being able to get this role, I was having a 1-year course of management, half in Germany and half in France, to be prepared for this project manager role. Then that was the end of my career path in the aerospace industry, and I was moving to a very different role, a very different type of industry. I was going to the healthcare industry, and I was having a job offer from GE Healthcare. So then I was really changing a lot of things. I was changing the technology, I was changing the type of company from Airbus to GE Healthcare, very different, and I was also changing the culture of the company, very different also. So moving to the healthcare business as a Six Sigma black belt, so still a kind of a project manager, but in a very different way, using a Six Sigma methodology. And I was learning the Six Sigma methodology that I did not know before, and I was applying this methodology to run my project. Then I was moving to something very different that I did not do before. And at GE at that time, we were changing a lot, very often, to very different roles. So taking a lot of risk and see if the so-called talented people were able to take on follow the path of changing a lot of things, to learn very quickly a lot of different things. So I was moving to a manufacturing manager role. So I was managing a part of the plant. Then I moved back to a Six Sigma role, having a Six Sigma champion role for Europe, and here being also in charge of launching the lean manufacturing. So that was the beginning of lean manufacturing in Europe, using consultants coming from Japan and from Toyota Production System. So very interesting period of my life in terms of learning about new methodologies. And again, my time at GE was absolutely fantastic.
So you've said like so many interesting things there, and I just want to jump right in because I'm so fascinated to really understand one thing that you mentioned, which was about early on in your career, you identified that management was something that you really enjoyed, and you went into a position there where I imagine for some people that would be quite a challenge and quite daunting, where you, as quite a younger person within the group, were managing people that were, did you say 29 years older than you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how did that feel, and how did you actually how were you successful at that? Because I do think that that could be quite a challenge for any leader, especially when you're early on in your leadership career.
Yeah, it's a good question, because when you start to have this type of position at this age, I was having a pretty large responsibility in terms of management of people. That was a big project, but also in terms of money. I had a pretty big bucket of money to manage and money to allocate. And I think I took it very pragmatically. And I was building a very strong team around me, with who I was working on the details, with who I was working on how to do things, how to run the projects, try to prepare also this project and be able to provide visibility. Project manager, it's also very much about providing visibility to all the team members. So communication came in my career path at this moment, where I had to communicate a lot to others. I had to provide details to others. I had to be detailed enough for them to understand what were the goals, what to achieve all together as a team, what were the challenges, what were the issues also sometimes. So communication was key, and it came at that time in my career, and then it was very helpful for me to have this ability to communicate to people, because when you are managing people, you have to communicate. If you do not communicate, well, you do not manage properly your team. So you need to be able to communicate, for sure.
So coming back on that, because communication it's a word that for me I find really fluffy nowadays, right? I see it in everybody's CV, and nobody would ever say I have bad communication skills. So it's something that I feel almost like it's been overgeneralized, and is used very, very often, so much so that sometimes the meaning is not always quite there. So when you talk about having good communication skills as a leader, what does that actually mean? What are you actually doing to demonstrate good communication skills with your team, for example?
Yeah, I think you need to be simple. When
Mm.
you do communicate, you cannot be very complicated because you need to be aware to whom you are communicating, right? If you are communicating to a broad, large audience with very different types of people, you need to be very simple. You can be you can deliver more complicated messages, but you need to be very clear. Even with very smart people, you need to have a very simple communication. So simplicity is important, I think, in the way you are communicating. It's true orally, but it's also true on your slides. If you are also using slides, very complicated slides, then does not really help a good communication. Then you need also to provide the right messages. So what do you want to share? What do you want them to have in mind when they are going to go out of the room with your communication? And again, it's usually it's very simple and it's very short. It's not very complicated. So basic rules such as the ones I'm just mentioning are really helpful, very helpful to help to be efficient in terms of communication. Again, I'm not saying that I'm a fantastic, very good leader with high communication skills, but you cannot be a good manager if you cannot communicate or if you are not communicating appropriately with your team.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, the thing about simplicity really is key, because speaking with executives, and just really having more and more of these podcasts as well, and speaking with people and understanding, people seem to sometimes have this concept that when you're dealing with people at a high level, you know, highly experienced or highly educated, that when you're communicating with them, you need to really use really, really long sentences and overly complex syntax to portray some sort of concept. And something that I've learned is literally the shorter the sentence,
The better
and
it is.
the better it is, the more impact that it has. And you know, if you can keep an email to maximum of 6 lines, that was a piece of advice that I was once given, and that's something I really try to stick to. If it's ever more than 6 lines, I'll pick up the phone and try to have a conversation. Simplicity is so important, not just in leadership, but also just generally in business, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in my career, one thing I was really learning is all about simplifying.
Mm.
Usually, and maybe we can talk about the rest of my career path, but really, one thing which is key is that historically a company used to complexify the processes, which is normal because you are going through events, audits, commercial events, new product launches, whatever. And you are complexifying your product portfolio, you are changing your processes. But if at a certain point of time, you don't stop, you don't step back a little bit, and you don't try to simplify, you are only adding complexity and complexity. And this is becoming inefficient, very difficult for people to read, very difficult for employees to interact, very difficult to deliver, and it's not efficient. It's really inefficient. So simplifying is key.
Mm.
And each time I'm launching an initiative, and I've launched a few in my professional life, improvement, simplification is always very, very important for any initiative.
Talk to me more about this Six Sigma that you did, the black belt piece, because it's almost, I feel like somehow that's filtered down into even your communication style. I mean, you talk about processes and simplifying. I don't know too much about it, but I do know it's a methodology that is all about simplifying processes, or not?
Well, not only, it's also about analyzing the way your process has been designed and try to avoid variability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about focusing one process on in a very efficient way that you are capable to deliver always the same thing, whatever the process is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really about simplifying. It's really about eliminating variability and be able to have a very efficient, focused process.
Kind of like when you go to McDonald's, it doesn't matter which McDonald's you go to, it always kind of ends up the same. It doesn't matter what store, what country.
For example, but if you go to McDonald's, it's all about being able to deliver your sandwiches the same way with no scrap and be able to have that on a regular way in terms of repeatability. So those are really the main concept without going into too many details regarding Six Sigma. So it's very scientific process at the end of the day. It's all about statistics. And it's really helping a lot for improving the efficiency of a company.
So coming back to your career, because you said that was the role that helped you basically transition from aerospace into medtech.
Yeah.
Talk me through that decision-making process from your side at the point where you were like, shall I leave aerospace and shall I join medtech? What attracted you about medtech and convinced you to kind of actually make that move and switch industry?
Yeah, I think one of the key drivers was that in the aerospace, you are working on huge projects, very heavy projects, a lot of money, a lot of people. And some of the decisions are also linked to political decisions of some countries. So sometimes the speed of progress, the execution is sometimes very painful because you are really tied to some political decisions. So I wanted to move to an industry where this is self-funded, where the company is having the decision, the entire power of deciding to go, not to go, to slow down or to accelerate. And that was really driving my decision-making process. And then I was not really thinking about healthcare, to be honest with you. When I decided, well, that's enough with the aerospace. I need to do something different. I was not necessarily thinking deeply about healthcare. That was one of the targets, but among others. And then healthcare came to me. Have been through a process where they were offering me this position. And I said, well, that was GE Healthcare, a very impressive company, very large, very fantastic ability to deliver very good products. And you know, three things are really driving my decisions to move from one job to another job or to move from one company to another company. First one is about high tech. So I need to have high tech, and this is something I like, engineering background. I really love technology. The second one is all about being in an international environment. And I wanted to continue to have this international environment. And the third one was about leadership and continue to have a leadership position within the company. So assuming that I was having those three things, I was really ready to take risks, and that's what I did.
So talk to me about your time in GE, because I know that culturally GE is a very strong company from a culture perspective. What would you say was kind of like your most defining moment when you were working at GE, and what did you learn?
Yeah, GE is an amazing company, very strong culture. The ability to align thousands of people in the same direction is absolutely amazing. This company was really having such an internal power of aligning people that was absolutely fantastic. First thing. Second thing, a lot of very smart people, very smart people, brilliant. So it was very energizing environment and culture. And third, and we need to remember that I was joining GE and I'm nearly an old guy now, but it was Jack Welch who was still the CEO of GE, and Jack was an amazing leader, very recognized as being one of the stronger leader in the world. And probably still he is, even though he recently passed away, but still he is. And Jack Welch was really driving the culture, but also the initiatives, but also the objectives, but also many things. He was having this ability to have a wide ability to see the big picture. He was able to manage very different things, financial markets or very industrial businesses, such as medical devices, but also aircraft engines and trains, and very different things. And he was also able to go very deep into methodologies. He was really knowing very well, for example, the Six Sigma methodology, and was able to speak with guys like me on about the Six Sigma methodology. So that was an amazing leader. So and Angie was investing a lot on training people internally, and that was really making a big difference in the ability to align people, as I was saying, but also in the ability to deliver with the right way of doing things. So fantastic culture, a fantastic experience. And that's really, and I know I'm still connecting with plenty of my previous colleagues at GE, even though some of us are not anymore at GE. We do still remember our GE times, for sure.
What would you say, because I do believe that leaders are a product of their leaders as well, right? Like you kind of see what you like and what you don't like, and that also helps to define you as you grow into a leadership role as a leader yourself. What would you say, you know, looking at Jack, for example, what did you learn from him that you've also applied, you know, being a leader yourself, that you've found has been successful?
He was having a simple communication, but very strong communication. He was having fantastic charisma. And he was very able to deliver strong, tough messages to everybody. And when I say everybody, hundreds of thousands of employees. And this ability to communication skills, that was something for a leader like Jack, among many of other skills, but that was really amazing. And when you saw one time Jack Welch communicating, I mean, you remember that time. It was really something pretty impressive.
So what happened kind of after? So talk to me about kind of after GE. Then what happened then?
Yeah, so I wanted to have a different impact, internal impact, and I wanted to go to something smaller. GE is fantastic, as I said, but large company, big company, and being a hero at GE is something, but very difficult to be visible, even though you are a talent at GE. So I wanted to impact differently a company, and I had the opportunity to go to a company which was named Sarin at that time, a leader in the class 3 medical device industry. And I took the job with a very different role that I never had before. I took the job as a QA RA manager for this company, working on class 3 medical devices. So I was going from large X-ray machines at GE to very small, tiny devices to be implanted in a patient body. So again, I took some risk, and by the way, life-sustaining devices, class 3 medical devices, life-sustaining devices. So in terms of challenges for a QA, quality assurance and regulatory affairs director, that was something. But that's also the kind of thing I'm looking for, taking risk, and I like taking risk. So my first assignment was about changing a lot of things. Change management is something I was also learning a lot at GE. So I was changing a lot of things in terms of the way of doing things, in terms of efficiency, in terms of also about managing backlogs of different things. So I had this QRA assignment for 1 year, and then I moved very quickly to a very different role that I had a little bit before when I was at GE. I moved to a plant manager role. So I took a plant, complete plant, an autonomous plant, with very challenging, always with operations objectives to deliver always the same thing every day of our life, making sure that we have the right level of quality, making sure that we have the right pace, everybody is aligned, very also able to attack issues. You cannot be stopped by anything. So very different role, very operational. And my Six Sigma and in manufacturing experience were also helping me a lot with this assignment. Then I had the opportunity to move to an executive role. So being at an executive, a member of an executive committee for this company. And I moved to an executive role, but I got back to a QA position. So I was a vice president at the executive committee, but with a QA responsibility. Then I took the franchise, so moving to a general manager role, taking R&D or product development and marketing, so very different, I confess. And then I took the role of president, as I was saying, in May 2018. So that was my career path in the medical, in the active implantable medical devices field.
So something I would love to ask, because I do a lot of recruitment in regulatory and quality, and sometimes I'm discussing with candidates, and I get sometimes the impression that sometimes regulatory and quality's voice is not always heard, and it's not always seen as the person who brings the good news, right? As somebody who has worked in both roles now, has worked in a kind of executive leadership role, as well as you've worn that quality regulatory hat, what actionable advice could you give to people working in QARA in order to make their message better heard by senior leadership?
Yes, so patient safety first, for sure. But you also need to be a business leader. So you need to continue to help the business. And if you have to stop a manufacturing line, if you have to stop the development of a product, if you have to take any strong action because there is a risk which has to be managed this way, well, you need to help to recover. You need to help to fix. I mean, yourself, your team, you need to be part of the recovery plan, and not only stopping and stepping back. No, it's not the way I was really managing things when I was QA. I was always very involved in the recovery plan with my colleagues from R&D, from operations, from any other departments, to make sure that at the end of the day, we are really capable to recover, to release products with, of course, the right level of quality, and do the right things the proper way, but very involved, very operational with the team to be able to catch up.
So it's actually that idea of rolling up your sleeves and, okay, maybe something I'm about to say is going to cause a problem, but let me help you find the solution for that, or let me at least come with potentially some suggestions to help move that forwards rather than stepping back.
Yeah. Absolutely, Elena. But not only this, taking the lead. I was really pushing my team to take the lead on the recovery plan. So they were leading the multifunctional team to really understand the issue, fix it, recover, make sure afterwards it will not reoccur anymore. So a very operational role, a kind of a crisis management mode. And the other thing also, which is important for me, especially for the QA position, is to take care about processes. So not only about the so-called QA processes linked to the QMS, to the quality management system, but also take care about much more processes. And we have plenty of processes to run a company and be able to improve those processes and be able to help to improve all kind of transversal processes. You know, when you are a QA person, you have the opportunity to be very transversal in the organization. Across the board, you are probably one who knows the best how to develop, how to manufacture, how to sell, how to manage all the different processes of a product during the product life cycle. So you are very capable to help every department, every operational departments, to be much more efficient with the way they work. And that's also how I was looking at the QA role. It's all about improving the efficiency overall of the company.
So something that you've mentioned a couple of times during the discussion that's really kind of I've really picked up on is this idea of risk, and sometimes taking a bit of risk in your career, right?
For me.
Yeah. So would you say that that's generally kind of like it? Would you say that it's a good thing to try to do, to push yourself outside of your comfort zone sometimes and maybe take a little bit of risk?
Oh yes, for sure. And I think you have to take risk, because if you do not generate risk, well, you stay in a very static mode, and you do not change anything in your professional life, and you do not improve the way you are working. You do not look for a new way of doing things to improve things around you. So I think you need to take risk. I think you need to change, and you need to have different roles, in different departments. You need also to go through different companies, and I think it's important. It's probably not for everybody, but for somebody who want to have an executive or senior executive role. I think this is key. If you want to be somebody as a very talented people as an expert, maybe not. Maybe you need to have this background with a lot of history in the same field, working in the same types of technology, and you need to have this long background in the same area. But for an executive, a leader, you need to have such a type of experience taking risk. Otherwise, you never take risk for the company you are managing. You will never take risk with the business model you are working. You are never trying to improve things. And this is the way we have to operate. The environment is moving too fast for not being able to take risk.
If you were to kind of look back at your career, what would you say was the biggest risk that you took?
Probably moving from the aerospace to the healthcare, changing a lot of things. I think that was probably the most risky change. But that was a fantastic experience. Very challenging, yes. A lot of things to understand, to control, to tackle. But yes, that was a fantastic experience.
A question that I'm asked a lot, and I'd love to get your take on this because you're somebody that obviously that's done it, is how do you get a job, or how do you get a job doing something that you've never done before? Because you're somebody that's obviously crossed industries, you've crossed different role types, different seniority levels. What advice would you give to somebody that's asking that question?
Yes, very, very good question. And I think you need to still have some continuity with something. And the three things I was mentioning before were key, and those are three red lines in my career. So high tech, and I was confident that technically, even though it was challenging, I was able to understand the technology. The international environment, and that's really something I wanted to continue to have, to continue to work with different cultures, different people, working in English, and really working in something very challenging in terms of different people coming from different countries in the same area. And the third thing, the leadership role. So I was still keeping that, when I was moving from the different companies or different roles, I was still having those three things. And I think you need to be confident on something that you can count on. Right? And I was really very confident with those three things. Then all the rest, I had to figure out how to manage it, and that's what I've done. But I think you need to have those red lines to be able to take risk. So it's not from one area to another area without any link. You still need to have some links.
You need to have something that you can bring to the table into that role that would add value ultimately.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So obviously we've spoken a lot about the positives, but if you were to reflect, I love asking this question because I also think we learn a lot from our mistakes, right? What's been your biggest mistake?
Well, in terms of career path, I think one of my mistake was when I was in the aerospace industry. I was project manager for quite a long time. Something
How
like
long?
6 years. 6 years.
Okay.
Even though I had a fantastic experience being able to work in different countries with very different type of people and cultures, I think it was probably a little bit too long, and it could have been shortened because I did not learn so many things during those 6 years. And probably that could have been faster, and it could have been also accelerating a little bit my career. Then if we are thinking about issues or mistakes, for sure I did several, and in terms of communication, for example, I remember when I was communicating the new methodology, lean manufacturing, to unions, and they quickly understood that it was a cost cut process or whatever, and I enter into something that I was not expecting because I was not stepping back enough into this in terms of being able to prepare to respond to this. And that was kind of mistake I was doing, and I had to work a lot to to recover afterwards with them. So you know, I did several things like that in my career. But yeah, in terms of career path, I think I could have been faster if I would have moved faster just after my project manager role.
So on that, and because there's conflicting debates about how long people should spend in each role, right? And sometimes I speak to people who are debating, do I just stay in a position because on my CV it will look like I've job hopped if I don't, to make it look like I've been there longer, or should I just jump now because I'm not learning anything anymore? What would be what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, it's really depending on each person, right? Well, I can't speak for me.
Okay.
But I really need changes around me. I cannot stay longer with the same environment, the same responsibility. I really need to have things which are changing. So if it does not change, I really trying to do it myself and change things myself. Not changing for changing. It's not the point. Changing for improving, changing for having the motivation around the fact that you are changing things, and you will have to rethink about what's going to be the impact. You have to rethink about how will you be able to communicate efficiently that you want to go in this direction. You have to rethink about the fact that how people will follow you, because that's for leaders, that's also something. How do people do follow you? So that's the way I see things. So I cannot be static for a long time, but that's my personal view, of course.
I always say to people, you know, like for example, if you have, call it 6 years of experience, right? Like, do you actually have 6 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience that you're just repeating over and over again 6 times? Because the most important thing, I think, is that you're learning and you're able to actually develop, right? So whether that's you stay in one company for 20 years, but every 5 years you change departments or you change roles, that's, as you said, that's still changing and learning stuff. But if you're just kind of like sitting in a role because you're just adding up, you know, time on your CV so that it looks good when you go to your next role, and you're just repeating the same thing over and over again without actually developing, then I would argue, you know, it's time for a change. But these are the type of discussions, you know, that I have with candidates. And another discussion or another question I'm frequently asked, and I'd love to get your perspective on this as probably a hiring manager at a certain point. What's more important, experience or education?
Well, education is important, but at a certain point of time in your career, experience, background are very, very, very important. So I think your question is very I would say not broad enough. We need to probably respond not exactly to your question, Elena, but maybe I think as a manager who is trying to hire somebody, education is important for sure, but background and experience are, as I said, also very, very important. But also the fit is important.
Totally.
Because you need to have a team. You need to have somebody with who you can work, with who you can fight. So the fit is very, very, very important. The fit with you, the fit with the rest of the team, and also the motivation is key. If you have somebody who's not motivated, don't even try. I mean, even if he or she has the right level of skills, the right level of competencies, but motivation is key, because you need to do things with energy. You need to have this energy to be able to be successful. If there is no energy, no motivation, well, it's not working well, or it's working, but not at the level that we can expect.
And then what about, so for example, something, coming back to the education versus experience thing, if I gave you an example of someone, for example, that, let's say, had no leadership experience, but had studied a course on how to lead someone and was really motivated to do it and a good fit, or somebody, for example, that had led a team but didn't have the course or the technical background behind, let's say, the certificate, but had done it before, and you're recruiting a leader, even if it's a small team, where would you lean? Would you start by looking at the certificates, or would you say, okay, actually talk to me about what you've done and what your successes have been, and then make a decision?
Well, personality is key. So degree is not only the thing I would look at. Personality, the way of communicating, again, communication.
That's definitely the angle that we're going to go with you. I think this is definitely your key message you're putting out on this discussion. So in terms of kind of self-improvement and development, because you're somebody that likes to, you said you really like changes and learning things. What do you do to keep developing and learning yourself?
Yes, good question, because at a certain point of time, there is no training or courses anymore after having maybe an executive course, a couple of things like that. But so to be able to continue to learn, I go out.
You go out?
I leave the company. I need to not living forever. I mean, I really try to have other type of discussions with other leaders of companies, with people who are thinking about very different things, trying to step back and think about very different topics regarding very different things. So not necessarily healthcare in the healthcare environment or medical device thing. And I'm really trying to step back and have different types of discussions, point of view from other leaders from other types of industry, and really try to diversify the way I'm interacting with people, not only my team inside the company, trying to have this type of discussion with other people from other type of companies, different types of industries, some politicians too. I'm also trying to have some discussions, with politicians. And well, in terms of communication, Elena, talking about communication, I mean, they are the king. So I'm really passionate about hearing about politicians' talks and things like that. So really trying to have different types of experience with different people. So go out, talk to different types of people.
Have you read the book Blue Ocean Strategy?
Yeah, sure.
Because it's so valuable, isn't it? Getting a totally different industry's input onto kind of like what you're doing, because sometimes you end up in this box and you surround yourself otherwise with people that have the same problems as you in the same industry, but sometimes by speaking to somebody in a totally different industry, you have a completely different viewpoint, and it could open up a new market, it could open up a new process, and is so important for just having more of a bird's eye view in terms of like what you're doing. Okay, so I've got two more questions for you. The first one is more about how do you deal with the pressure of having such a big job? So what do you do to relax?
So I used to go jogging, and I try to do some sports outside, and also spend time with my children and my family. But of course we all have a lot of pressure as leaders. And here we have also the pressure of patient safety, class 3 medical devices, life-sustaining devices. So this is something that you have to somehow like, otherwise you cannot live, otherwise you cannot be happy with what you are doing. So you need to like that. If you don't like it, don't do it. Very easy. But yes, trying to escape and run a little bit as soon as I can, as often as I can.
Just to kind of clear your heads, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you ever switch off?
Well, it's a nice question for me. Not really, and I took some vacations, of course, like everybody, but I'm not really completely disconnected. Even though during vacations I try to be very passive, and I let things going, and I rely on my team. But I'm still connected. I still want to listen, to hear, to read what's going on, what is happening. So I'm still connected, but passive.
So, okay, big question that I like to always finish on to take it really to the macro level. So, what is the legacy that you want to leave?
It's a very nice question. I think I really want to be a role model for the employees. I think you can only really drive a company, lead initiatives, drive change, if you do not apply that to you. So you need somehow to have this credibility to be able to do that, and have everybody with you. So credibility, role model is I think key for the type of role we are having as leader of the company.
Wow, so thanks so much. I mean, with the time has absolutely flown by on this episode, and I've really enjoyed our discussion, Benoit. So thank you so much for being a guest here on our podcast. And for those of you who are listening, don't forget to like, share, comment if you got value, comment if you've got questions. I would love to hear your inputs. And Benoit Clinchamps, thanks again for being part of Career Diaries by eu-mdr. And to all of you listening, until the next time, take care.